You've been told by everyone you're special, but are you specialish? Welcome to the Film Trap Podcast. I am Chris Gore, and if you know from watching or listening to this, you know I'm a huge fan of documentaries. In particular, I really love documentaries that are personal journeys and stories. It's not often I get to talk to a documentary filmmaker that is not only the filmmaker, but also the subject of her own documentary. This is Jessica Watkins, who is a comedian and a documentary filmmaker who made this amazing journey of you decided to walk across America from one end of the country to the other end of the country. And it's something that, you see comes up in news stories, like someone walked or they jogged or whatever it is for some, you went out, you decided to do this, and not only to do it, but also to do stand-up comedy on the way. What made you think that this was a good idea to begin with? I think it's kind of crazy.
It's slightly masochistic. I just needed to be juggling everything at once. So, comedy I knew, but I had not really ever filmed anything. I had been in front of the camera, not behind. And I hadn't, I walk places, but I had never hiked or camped. So this was all new, and I've learned so much in this process.
Well, what I liked about it is that you documented your kind of decision to do it, then how you physically set about doing it. You had like this sort of rolling thing, so you didn't necessarily have a huge backpack. You had this thing that you were rolling.
Yeah, this running stroller. Yeah, so people use them a lot for the cross-country treks because you go through areas where you won't, you need water, and once you get to the west half of the country, you're carrying water for a few days. Right. So the cart is the best way to go for that. And it did mean that I was carrying film equipment. So, right. When you go on hikes, it's all about, you're measuring everything that you're carrying. Like some people, they cut their toothbrush in half so you don't have, because you're carrying like you're every ounce you're looking at. And here I needed a computer, I needed drives, I needed the camera, sound equipment. So that added a whole other element to, and then of course I needed my camping gear and whiskey and,
whiskey. Whiskey for sure. But I really admired like watching how you showed, you're going to reveal the process in the midst of the process.
Yeah.
And, yeah. I thought that was really clever. And then additionally, you documented your kind of stand-up gigs that you did along the journey in very different parts of America, which I really appreciated. I think that we sort of get caught up in sort of one vision of what America is. I think we're really living in two Americas at this moment. And I really love that you have a very balanced view, and you didn't, it's also your personal story. A couple of things that really struck me. You met a guy who told a very long story. You gave him $20 and he never returned.
Yes, Gary.
I'm sure that was not the only scary story along the way. Can you tell me a little bit about like what it's like to be on that journey and you're by yourself out in whatever and encountering all sorts of people?
Interestingly, when I meet Gary, I had just before that, I had passed on the same trail I was on. I had passed a group of people earlier in that day, and I had just stopped briefly to say hi, but and they were all like maybe in their 80s walking together. And after I left them, I was like, man, I should have interviewed them. I should have asked them some questions. Like I'm supposed to be, at this point I was only a few weeks into the walk, and I just really didn't feel like, once you're walking miles and miles a day, you really don't feel like chatting it up with people. So anyways, after I encountered them, I was like, you need to be more open and receptive to people. And that is when I met Gary, and I opened up to Gary, and we hiked and we talked, and then, he scammed me out of $20. So I learned that lesson. But just as I and most people and women specifically have to navigate life by, being as prepared as we can, but then trusting your gut and just feeling out a situation, and you make the judgment call. That was just, the same thing I do in normal life as a woman. I think, I was just putting that to play on this walk.
What was it like? I mean, at least it turned into a good story, because that is one of the standout funny stories about this journey. But what was it like then getting to these places? And after, like, I mean, it's a physical, you talk about like just how physically draining this is. And there's another guy that really stood out to me. He was also a comedian who said, give yourself the freedom to quit. And he was like, I thought that guy was such a downer. Like his whole like idea was, oh man, what a, like,
yeah. What I will say about Dan is, since then, he just had a baby, he's married, he's so happy. But what Dan taught me, because it took him 7 years to do the walk. Mm-hmm. And when he finally finished it, he really thought that was going to change everything. And it changed nothing. He fell into a deeper depression. He felt even more lost. So what he was giving me, he wasn't the first person to tell me that, and it's true. Even when I finished the walk and I got back to New York, and what you just went through, this crazy thing, but no one else did. So I fell into a depression as well. And, I think I caught him just on the heels of that. Like he had just finished in a couple years prior. And I think he was, he was feeling pretty down about it. And truthfully, the reason, you're pushing yourself physically, you're pushing yourself mentally. And I think specifically for people that are, performers, comedians, Dan and I were clearly kind of on the same mind frame of what we were trying to achieve. And, sometimes it's really hard to quit. Sometimes it's really hard to give up. And sometimes I think he's right. Like sometimes you do need to give up, and sometimes you do need to quit. And sometimes that's a better choice for you. And if you keep holding on to these feelings of like the woulda, shoulda, coulda, then it's just a downer. And I think, that sort of happened to Dan a little bit, but he's found his way out, it seems.
Well, it's like, I'm reminded of what John Waters once said: you should try to succeed at something for 10 years. And if you don't really see any sort of success after 10 years of attempting to do something, you might consider quitting. But you didn't do that. And I do feel it's also like, when you're trying to accomplish something that's so huge like that, walk across the country, it's not something that everybody does. I've taken on projects I thought were too big at the time, like making a film or writing a book. And I did those things. There is that sort of like, well, it's over. There is sort of a depression that sets in. It didn't like, it's like, okay, it didn't like, it's not a magic wand, right? But it is truthfully about the journey. And I so much appreciated the fact that not only you showed yourself sometimes at your worst moments, and sometimes your conflicts with your mother and whatnot, and how you dealt with that, but also the documentary goes much deeper layers about personal trauma that you experienced and how you dealt with that. So this isn't just, I mean, yes, it's a documentary, but it's also part comedy, part like also this revealing personal journey. What was it like to kind of get to that place where you could talk about that and be sort of just emotionally naked on stage? It really was moving.
Thank you. So me revealing the assault wasn't always going to be a part of the film. It's obviously a part of myself, and it is part of the journey that I was on, and sort of, maybe why I was doing the walk in the first place. But I had been through was really fortunate to be through years of therapy before that, and had really felt like I was in a place of being very healed, which is why I can talk about it, and why I hope that the film inspires other people to, you don't have to like make a film and share it with the world, but to just open up, tell your story to someone, because I think it is very cathartic. And in the film, I captured this radio interview where they sort of candidly asked me about being raped, and as a joke, and it's like this moment, and if I hadn't have captured that on film, I don't know that how or if it would be a part of the film, but it really was part of the story. And it made me, in the end, though there were a Gary or two along the way, I was okay. And I felt that I could trust in strangers and trust in the unknown. And it was sort of the ultimate, what was she wearing? Here I am camping on the side of the road and sleeping in strangers' homes. And so, some people might think that you're sort of setting yourself up for something bad to happen to you. But, I just don't feel that way. And I think that in general, most people are good people. And, I was asked the question a lot about, wasn't I scared? Wasn't I scared to be a woman alone? And, the truth is that that's how women navigate life all the time. So I really didn't feel less safe as a woman on the road, like me personally, because that's just how I navigate life in general. So I wasn't going to allow that to deter me from doing, some badass trek. And I'm just really happy that the way it came out in the film, and I'm excited to share this story. And it's, for me, kind of another level of healing in this process. So this film for me, feels very cathartic.
Yeah, I appreciated the way that you handled all of that, and then how it came. I don't want to ruin anything. You need to see this movie, Specialish. So look up the trailer. It's out on video on demand. But it comes to a conclusion, at least. I don't want to give anything away. You need to see the film, but it really is so.
I don't die.
Yes, you survive.
No, I hate to spoil it, but I don't get murdered.
Okay. What was? I mean, I wonder what was going to therapy better in terms of healing, or going on this journey and making this documentary. I'm trying to think, like, what is maybe the less expensive option? Is
they're hand in hand. They're hand in hand.
Oh, really?
I don't personally, I really believe in therapy, and it totally changed my life. I hadn't told anyone for years about the assault that happened to me. I was lucky enough, well, as you say, okay, it's kind of revealed in the film later, that I had also a special circumstance, basically, of, coming into contact with the person who assaulted me. So I feel like that was a gift. I really feel that way. And anyways, therapy gave me the tools to be able to further process. And I try really hard to not use my art as therapy. I think that as stand-up comedians, there's this, stigma that you have to be depressed or like slightly mentally unstable to come from a dark place in order to be funny. And I just, I try not to use the stage as therapy. I try to use the stage as I want people to be reflected in that, so to help them heal, instead of, putting my healing on an audience, like forcing them to be my therapist. I kind of want that role to be the other way. I want it to feel like therapy for the audience, I guess.
What do you feel the current landscape of comedy is? We live in such a time that is, I think, so horribly divisive, and it's really disheartening to me, as someone that's politically always been liberal on many things, but also just more in the middle. I think the extremes of both sides are kind of batshit, if you ask me. But like, we now live at a time where it's just like we're seeing comedians canceled for things that they said years ago, or bits that they did. I just worry. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are comedians, and I for a brief time attempted a comedy career, realizing to really be successful in that realm, that has to be your full and 100% focus.
Yeah.
And it's not there. But for example, my friend Yoshi Obayashi, who's a comedian, and he's very politically incorrect, and he's admired by many comedians for what he's able to say. I worry for this sounds weird. I worry for the future of comedy.
Yeah, I wouldn't be worried. I wouldn't be worried. It's growing pains that that we're having in so many different ways, from having social media and having this, immediate, receipts that people can hold up about, but I don't know. And I totally don't buy it. I don't totally buy into the cancel culture. I think you say what you're going to say, stick by it. If it's funny, then people are going to laugh. And if they don't think it's funny, then they're not going to laugh. And if, it's like, I think there's rebounding, I think if you can't rebound from some tweet that you had 7 years ago where you said like a word that we're not allowed to say anymore or something, if you can't rebound from that, then that's on the artist. Again, I don't know. You have to stand by and you have to keep going. And if you're, it's not a popularity contest always. Like you're not going to win everyone. And that not every album is great. Not every song is great. Not every joke is going to be great. And I think that it's okay to tell a bad joke and you just have to rebound from that. There's cringy things that I have even in this film that, because I've been working on it for so many years now. There's little moments where I'm like, I would take that out probably. And that's just evolution in the last few years of my mind. So, we evolve. And I think that it's just growing pains right now, but I'm not too worried about it.
Well, I appreciate that.
I
appreciate that you left that stuff in. I think that I look at someone like who I followed since the 90s, Howard Stern, for example, right? Like there are jokes that he made in the 90s that he would not make now.
Yeah.
He's evolved, but I'm not gonna hold him accountable for something he said in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean it's contextual. It's contextual, and I think that we get that. Like, I don't think that it's just, no one's going to look at a tweet that Howard Stern made 30 years ago and go, you're canceled. That's, if you look at, and you see that this person has it's reflecting in their, past over and over and over again, then, that's where you go like, oh, wait, is this person actually like a racist, sexist asshole? And I think that that's fair. We get to look at that now. We're seeing things different. We don't just have to laugh and pretend everything's funny. We can also say like, oh yeah, I don't think that's funny actually. And people got to deal with that.
Well, I do think that, I think Howard Stern being the best example, just like someone I've followed for years, is like, he has evolved on many issues. So
yeah, I think people are there for that. They want to see that. They want to see people change. They want to see people grow. I think it's the resistance to that is the cancel part,
Right.
It's the rebound, I think, is the important part. Like, are you really going to grow from this? If you don't think that the crazy tweet you had whenever it was bad, but everyone else is telling you that it's not funny, that's something to look at.
I don't think we realized that when Twitter first came about on the scene in 2007, that it would be part of our permanent record. You know what I mean?
I'm still trying to figure out how to freaking use it. And I've been on it for like 15 years. I'm like,
I don't know. I also feel like once you get out of that bubble and you see how divided people are and you see the vitriol and hate that is just from every side, it's horrifying. And then I go out in the world and I go to my local dive bar, and it's all different types of people from all walks of life. And we all get along, we laugh, and we watch whatever. We're sitting there watching sports or whatever on the TV. And it's just like, oh, this is the real world. The real world is not the internet. But
the real world is what I experienced on the walk.
Yes.
In a lot of those places, if someone had just seen me on paper, I would be crazy liberal girl. But they encountered me in the wild. They didn't know anything about me. And social media wasn't even I was using Facebook at the time, but Instagram had pretty much just started ramping up when this was starting. So it wasn't even as easy for people. I mean, I always had the fear that in the middle of the night, someone was going to look at my YouTube and then, be like, get the fuck out of my house. I didn't know you hated God or whatever. But people, they stayed away from it. They stayed away from the most of the divisive topics. There were some awkward moments after you're drinking beers, and then the white person has to be like, hey, you're white too. Let me tell you an off-color joke. And you're like, no, keep that in. Keep that to yourself. And I say that, I didn't just like laugh and let it go. I was like, oh, I don't think that's funny. And then they're like embarrassed. But that's how we have to deal with it. We grow. I didn't judge them. Like, I don't think that these people are bad people. They're just, we all are evolving. So, and it was good for me too. I mean, I was staying with people that I would have never have, wouldn't be my friends that I'm meeting in New York City. That's for sure. At the Piney compound in Arkansas, and they're just the nicest people who really took care of me and looked after me. And we didn't talk about We didn't talk about a lot of it. Not that I think that that's the answer, not talking about it, but there was a vulnerability there. And I think just the people that were open to letting in some random hiker, period, that means that they have a little bit of a, you know, an open mind. So maybe we don't see totally eye to eye on who we're voting for, but I think underneath all that, really what these people want is just, they want to work, they want to make money for their family, and they want to like live safely. And
this is what I love about your film, and why I reached out to be able to talk to you, is that you did not judge. You weren't judging people from different walks of life, and I appreciate that so much. I felt like your openness means that they might look at you. Well, she's open. You didn't act in an elitist way towards others just because they had differing views, and I think that we don't see that often enough. And you did this sort of organically because that's just who you are, or the sense of who you are that I got from watching your film. And I just love that. I'm like, why can't more people be that way? Because I always point this out, mostly to my nerdy friends, is that, you know, Luke Skywalker never canceled Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. Luke believed in the good in Darth Vader, his father, and he came to the light, but it wasn't by forcing his views onto Vader. Does that make any sense? I don't know where I'm going with this.
I mean, I'll say, you know, this is kind of related, but maybe not really. But you know, bringing it back to my assault, which is, you know, comes out in the film. And through therapy, like, I really do feel bad for those people that assaulted me. Like, I genuinely feel that way. I have no hate toward them, or like, and I think that going through that process of truly healing and like no longer feeling like a victim, and kind of feeling like, oh my God, you guys are victims. Like, how sad that you have to live in your life with these like dark secrets. Mm-hmm. That's gotta suck, you know? And I think that going through that process probably also like, might be one of the things that makes me a more open person, you know, and these, I don't know, and on a deeper level of just, I genuinely do feel like most people are good, and unfortunately they're just, I don't know, bad circumstances sometimes.
Well, I appreciate that you see the good in people.
Except for Gary. Fucking Gary. Yeah. Gary. Sorry, we can't.
I wonder if Gary
will word on here, but
I wonder if Gary will ever see your documentary.
I feel like we're gonna cross paths again someday.
Well, he owes you $20. I mean,
he does.
It's ridiculous.
I took it out of my super secret stash I had. My grandmother gave me a tiny little Bible that she said she brought it everywhere with her when she traveled. And she stuck $20 bills in it. And so I just kept that in a little plastic bag hidden in my cart. And it was like my money if I ever needed it. And I gave Gary $20 out of the Meemaw Bible. Unbelievable.
Wow. That's amazing. Jessica Watkins, your film is fantastic. Specialish. If you're listening or watching this, go check it out. It's a documentary that is a journey and takes you places. And I just appreciate you documenting your experience and coming up with something incredibly original. And just seeing, I love the moment at the end where you meet members of your family at the beach, and that like I don't know, just I really was touched by the film. So thank you.
That was a total surprise. Those were friends from California, friends. A total surprise. So, and you know, it's a awesome moment because it was perfectly imperfect, you know.
It's awesome. Jessica, thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
When are you doing stand up?
Soon. I just got fully vaxxed, so I'll be back on stage very soon.
Congratulations. Yes, I'm fully vaxxed as well, so now starting to get out in the world. I even saw a movie in the theater recently.
Wow, how'd that feel?
It was awesome. It was awesome. I mean, I follow all the rules, but I was just happy to be in a theater.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.